JDL 613 Brotherhood. Here we go for our first podcast. And I got in front of me the man who started it all, Israel or Mike or whatever you like to be called. But I know you as both. Sometimes I call you Mike, sometimes I call you Israel. What do you prefer to go by?
Israel.
Okay. Before we get started, and I certainly want to talk about the JDL 613 Brotherhood. I mean, that's the primary focus of doing this podcast. And then going forward, everybody that we're going to interview is going to be somehow related to our JDL 613, or at least has a similar path. But your personal path has been quite interesting. So I want to, if you don't mind, take you down memory lane a little bit.
Sounds good.
Okay. So where did you grow up exactly?
So I grew up in Central Jersey, Mercer County area. Was raised Catholic. Family wasn't really religious, but they wanted to, have us at least have some basis of religion or some faith, believe in a higher power of some sort. And we went to, regular services on Sunday, and I went to Sunday school and things like that up till about teenage years. And then I kind of had fallen away. I had lost belief in Catholicism and the New Testament and such, and it just seemed like too magical for me. Things didn't make quite sense. And but I had a great childhood, blue collar.
Mom and dad in your life?
Yes, yep, both mother and father. Dad was, a blue collar guy. Mom was a nurse, that kind of stuff. Have a brother. And just great life and average life, you know what I mean?
As a kid, did you play sports, or were you more into music and art?
I was always into music and art. I was in bands, and the majority, or a number of people in my family did art, stained glass, painting, and all kinds of stuff. And I fell into that myself. Did a lot of graffiti when I was younger, up until my adulthood, and illegal and legal, painted murals, highways, trains, all that kind of stuff. Did a lot of drawing, portraits, and you name it.
Okay. If we go back to high school, what kind of kid were you in high school?
I was a troublemaker. More so, I just didn't know where I fit in. I throughout my whole life, I never felt like I fit in, and it always seemed like I was striving for that. Like, I felt like I had this big hole in my soul or my heart, and I tried to fit in with different crowds. And of course I had friends and I had my main group, but I don't know, just something always felt off. Like something was missing or something wasn't right my whole life. And I actually started trying to learn about different religions in high school. I read books on Wicca, which is a form of witchcraft, all kinds of stuff, different forms of Christianity. I didn't really delve into Judaism until I was older, but just trying anything. And then around that time, I started using substances, smoking marijuana, drinking, and that led me down that path.
What age was it that you first experimented with narcotics? Legal or illegal?
About 15. About 15.
And how did that come about? Was it, you
well,
said marijuana, was it alcohol as well?
Yeah, so all my friends were skipping school and going out to smoke marijuana and hang out, maybe have a few beers, stuff like that. And I had stayed away from all substances and alcohol because I had seen it, with friends.
What age did you say? Was it about 16?
About 16, yeah.
Okay.
And I had stayed away from it. I never really thought of doing it. And then all my friends were smoking marijuana, and I was thinking, well, it can't be that bad. You know what I mean? Hey, it's not heroin. It's not something heavy drugs, And I started with that, and it just led, it built up.
Does addiction run in your family at all?
Yeah, another member of my family had gotten clean and is doing very well now, and works in recovery atmosphere and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you said about 16. Did you have any run-ins with the law? Did you find yourself ever in juvenile detention or anything like that, or were you able to steer clear of real serious problems?
I was always, thankfully, able to stay away from real serious problems. I was only arrested for small things like marijuana, small amount of marijuana, I got caught for like stealing a bottle of soda in Iran. I think I ran away from the cops, and it was always minor stuff. And then my only serious charge, or you could say serious, was I had gotten caught once for graffiti. And because in the town I live in, it was like a generally new thing, they wanted to make an example out of me. So I did 5 years on probation, but that was the most serious thing I ever got in trouble for.
Where I came from, that wouldn't be considered serious.
I know. I know.
And 5 years probation is definitely pretty strict
Yeah.
punishment for
Yeah.
doing graffiti.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's interesting. So you basically lived more or less, as far as I can say, you were a pretty good kid. Just at some point you started going astray with substances. When you were using the substances, how did that make you feel? I mean, obviously you got drunk, you get stoned and everything, but did it give you some, did you feel like more acceptable, like you were more accepted with your
Yeah.
peer groups or something like that? Or
Yes.
was it more just, you just wanted to escape your, because it seemed like you had a good home life. You wouldn't be something you wanted to escape your home life. It was more you felt more social, you're able to connect to people more
Exactly.
and outgoing.
Yeah, most definitely. So, during my younger years, I had no idea, later on in life, I was diagnosed with autism, Asperger's, at 35. But throughout my younger years, I was dealing with or suffering from the symptoms or experiencing the symptoms of it, but I had no idea what it was. Using substances helped me be more outgoing and more relaxed in social situations. I felt like I could tackle the world when I was high, things like that. But obviously those things, you eventually come down and then you suffer the consequences from that. Because it helps in the time, and that's the thing that's the worst, especially for those with Asperger's or autism, is some like marijuana and alcohol can work in the moment, but then it doesn't last, and you quickly learn that.
Gotcha. Well, unfortunately, none of these stories ever quite end here. So how far did your addiction progress, or how, I mean, you said you used marijuana and alcohol, but I'm sure that you've used more. Did you go on to other drugs, for example, like cocaine, meth, heroin, or anything like that?
Yeah, most definitely. So I had pretty much have used every substance. Meth was never one of my things. I did try it once. It wasn't a choice, like it was all that they had. And in your addiction, sometimes you take whatever you can get. But yeah, I had pretty much tried everything. Towards the end, I had gotten very addicted to opiates, heroin, pain pills, Oxycontin, Percocet, pretty much anything that was an opiate. And then eventually moved on to heroin for the last a few years. Eventually, I had overdosed. And that was a really, really bad experience. And that was one of the things that helped me wake up. I had gotten clean tried to get clean, and was clean for about 2 months, 3 months. And this is a mistake a lot of people tend to make. It was my birthday time, and I was trying to get people to come over, and nobody ended up coming through. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go get high one time. Just one time, and then I'll go back to being sober, no big deal, nobody will know. And I went and found the substance, found some opiates, and took it. And then the next thing I know, I wake up 17 hours later on my kitchen floor, and I can't move my legs or feel my legs. I then had to army crawl on my stomach through 3 rooms, and was able to then call 911 and my family. I passed out while on the phone with my family and woke up to them and 911 coming into the door. The ambulance, I was an addict, so they treated me, not so nicely, told me to stand up. They didn't believe that I couldn't walk or I couldn't stand up. And I was begging them, like, look, I can't feel my legs at all. I can't even move them. And finally, they helped me out. And then the next thing I remember, I woke up a few days later in the hospital, in the emergency room, my mother next to me, and she said, if you don't start wiggling your toes, you're gonna lose your leg. Because the blood from sitting down in the same position for 17 hours had pooled in my legs. And then when I did crawl, the blood clot had went into my kidneys. So I had a surgery to remove some muscle out of my leg. I was on dialysis for 2 years, and I ended up having to use a wheelchair for 3. I eventually was able to learn how to walk with the help of a cane and a walker, and then now today, I don't need any of those. I walk pretty fine, I run, I do everything. But that wasn't even enough to wake me up. It was the beginning of my wake-up call, but even through that period of time, I still used drugs in the hospital. Believe it or not, I had people deliver them to me and things like that, but that will show you the power of addiction. Even though I was at death's door, I still couldn't stop, you know, and for years after that, I still had gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And really the only thing that helped me was Judaism, you know. I had,
Well, had you tried any, had you ever been to detox or
Yeah.
recoveries, rehabs? You said
Yes.
you went to what rehab?
yeah, I had been to 12 different rehabs, and, you know, some of the times was forced, and you can't force an addict to get clean, and of
That's
course it didn't
different.
work then. You know, look, no addict is gonna get clean until they absolutely want to. It has to be them. You could try your hardest to push them into it, and you can mean the best, but they have to really want it, and I didn't want it at those times. And there were times where I did want it, and I tried, but it didn't work. I also tried methadone. In the end, that was one of the things that really helped me, but for sure, Judaism is the main thing
All
to
right.
help me crawl out of that.
Well, let's talk about that then a little bit.
Yeah.
So when did you, I mean, you grew up in rural, like not rural, but suburban,
Yeah.
kind of central Jersey. So that's not known as, I mean, I know the area myself because I used to own a home down that way, but it's not known as a hub for Judaism,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have, when you were in school, did you have Jewish friends or did you have any association with Jewish
No,
people?
not at all, not one bit. I pretty much like knew the things you would see on TV during Hanukkah, and that was then like in cartoons you might see like a Jewish guy or something like that, and that was really all I knew was the bare basics, you know. And where I grew up, there was apparently in the past there had been a large Jewish community, but they had all left by the time growing up and discovered Judaism, they were all gone. So.
I had people tell me, other converts, that when they were growing up, that when they would see things on television or happen to bump into Jewish people, that they became very interested and they would, you know, it was intriguing to them, and it's something about seeing something Jewish, whether it be on TV or experiencing in person, drove them to learn more. Was that your experience, or you don't even have anything to reference because you just see?
Yeah, I didn't really have anything to reference but cartoons, and maybe you would hear about Hanukkah,
Right.
and we like learned the basics of Hanukkah, but that was in school or in Catholic school you would learn about it or learn about Jews leaving Egypt and stuff like that,
Right.
but that was really it. So I really had no idea until I met a Jewish girl.
So what was your first experience with meeting or being being introduced to something traditionally Jewish? Like what was the first experience?
Yeah, so I started dating a girl, and she just happened to be Jewish.
How'd you meet her? Did you meet her on some kind of a dating site?
We met online,
Okay.
and we just kind of hit it off. And it didn't really matter that she was Jewish and I was non-Jewish. We were just, looking to be, hang out, date, all that stuff. And she's secular, she was secular. She was conservative Jewish, but like a holiday. She would go on holidays and stuff like that, not eat kosher and things. But I was invited to Passover and Rosh Hashanah.
Oh.
And, I had no idea what these holidays are, but it was like an amazing experience, and sitting around the table and watching everybody like there as a family together and happy and all that stuff just made me really like curious, made me very curious.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one thing about Judaism. It's certainly family oriented. So that was the first experience. Now, were you in love with this girl, and did you want to experience? You learn about Judaism so that you could bring this about in your own life with her?
So actually,
like a more of a, did you see her as a potential wife?
yeah, so we had intended to marry and we were engaged, but that wasn't like a prerequisite that I become Jewish. So what happened was, as I told you, I went to the Rosh Hashanah and Passover holidays, and I really just wanted to know the basics, what Jews believed in, and what her family, like what these holidays were that we were celebrating. I had no idea, and so I actually bought Judaism for Dummies because I really just wanted a very basic understanding. Like I didn't want to delve into the Torah. I didn't want to really go into the in-depths. I just wanted to know what the holidays were and what the basics were.
Just so you could get along with, if you're in a
Yeah.
Jewish environment, you
Yeah.
don't sound like you're completely, don't know anything.
Yeah, just to get by.
Right.
But I tell you, it was a wonderful book. And by the time I was finished reading that book, I just knew in my heart that this is everything that I've been searching for. This is everything that I've been looking for. And going back to the addiction, I spent years using drugs and trying to fill this hole in my heart. And when I finally found Judaism, it was like, ooh, I felt something fill it up a little bit. Whereas nothing ever did, women, gambling, drugs, music, nothing ever filled it up. But Judaism started to. And as I said, it wasn't a prerequisite to get married, but
Right.
so I went to go speak to a rabbi, and they give me the runaround, how they're supposed to do,
Right.
push you away and all that
Of
stuff,
course.
and which was okay. I understood that was going to happen. And then, after keep going back, he understood that this is what I really wanted, and I started on the journey. Now, eventually, we ended up breaking up. It was turned out to be a bad relationship, and the rabbi told me, like, really, you should take a break. You're no longer dating. You're no longer doing this with somebody, and to do it alone is very hard and a very hard task. And maybe you should take time to think about it. And I argued with him. And I said, no, this is what I want. I wasn't doing this to get married. I wasn't doing this for a relationship. I'm doing this for myself. But he still pushed me to take a break, and so I did take a break, and that lasted a number of years. I ended up moving out of that area and back into, my hometown where there are no Jewish people and are no synagogues, so I still lived the life of a Jew, but I was still in my addiction at the same time as well. But I was slowly crawling my way out, and as I became more and more serious about, loving Judaism and learning and all that stuff and just falling in love with it, I just became easier and easier not to use drugs, not to think about it 24/7.
Did you feel, from the Jewish community that you're a part of or have been a part of, did you feel like they were welcoming to you?
100%. Everybody's been so welcoming. It's been amazing, nobody's really put me down. Nobody's really look, I get it, I'm not your average Jewish guy, I'm a little different, I got long hair, I'm a little bit more, I'm a tough guy, street guy, but nobody ever looked at me like the rest of the world does and said, ooh, he's a little strange, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. No, everybody welcomed me with open arms, invited me to Shabbos, everybody was fantastic, and that was one of the real things that kept me in the community, was the welcomeness, how everybody sticks up for each other, everybody's looking out for one another,
Let me ask you a question. When going back to your childhood, when you were attending church and Sunday school, did you have, did you believe in the Catholic doctrine or were you always doubting?
I was always
Because
down.
obviously you're a convert and
Yeah.
you believe in what we believe, Judaism, which is not that Jesus was, certainly we don't believe that he was any sort of divinity. He was just a rabbi that existed when he existed.
Yeah.
Did you have a problem with that, the story of him being being the Son of God, I guess
Yeah.
you would?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it was there was all these little magical things that just didn't seem
Didn't
right,
add up.
didn't make sense, didn't add up, and they kept anytime you would ask it, not always, but a lot of times you would ask a question and they would just beat around the bush, they would never actually answer the question, they would kind of almost push it off, And I just didn't believe in it. Like, it never sat right with me. Like, compared to Judaism, like, it sits right with me. It feels right.
It makes the most. It feels
Yes.
genuine.
Yeah.
Now here's JDL 613 Brotherhood is a political group. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we want to help out the Jewish community in any way we can, whether it be helping any poor, elderly,
Yeah.
Holocaust survivors, children if
We're
they're
here to help
in
the
need,
community.
juveniles that might be going through issues like similar to what you went through. But I would think politically, we're a right-wing group that believes we're a Zionist group, and we believe in protecting the Jewish community physically as well. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah, we are a right-wing, Orthodox, Zionist group. You know, that's the path that we take. Now, you don't need to be Orthodox to be a member, but the ideology, the way that the organization runs, we go by an Orthodox kind of way of doing things. You know what I mean?
Okay, now getting back to your childhood
Yeah.
then, were you always involved politically in issues, or is this something new?
No, it's something new actually. I was never really involved with politics or anything like that until I became Jewish, and then I started to see the hate and the angry behind
You
people's hearts.
experienced it.
And I experienced it, and look, that was different. Like, everybody knows that people people stupidly hate Jews or are anti-Semitic.
Right.
But when it's directed at you, like after October 7th, that was that was a turning point for me, because like I never really experienced anything like that. And I never really felt it. Like, I had heard comments, I had people make comments and stuff to me.
Okay.
But it wasn't like to that level, and that was a big wake-up call. Now, I was politically motivated before October 7th, but that October 7th is what really pushed me towards activism.
Pushed a lot of people.
Yeah.
You weren't the only one. Now, going forward with what we're doing with the JDL 613, where do you see the JDL 613 in the coming months and years or so?
So we would like to continue with our volunteer work, combating anti-Semitism, and really just helping the community out. You know what I mean? Now we are a multifaceted organization. We focus not only on the combating anti-Semitism, but also trying to bring Jewish men together to bond, learn Torah, grow physically, mentally, and spiritually, and just have each other's back, build a family, build a real brotherhood. So when one Jewish man is in need, no matter what, if he needs someone to talk to, he needs someone to help him move his apartment, or
He's getting bullied.
somebody's attacking his family,
He feels
we're going to be
insecure
there.
in his college or
Yes.
her college.
Yeah.
Now, I've been knowing about the JDL probably longer than you've even, probably going back to when you were a kid, because I'm a little bit older than you, and I've been Jewish my whole life, so it's something I know. But I got to be honest with you, you know more about Meir Kahane and the JDL history than I do. And even though I was not really in the JDL, but I've always been a huge fan of Meir Kahane and what he did in the past. I'm probably too young to have been in the original JDL, and I didn't grow up in New York. I grew up in California, although we did have the JDL, but I was slightly too young. But your knowledge of Meir Kahane and the JDL history is really impressive. And you've been able to compile a mini archive, a library really, of speeches and all of his books online. So if anybody needs that, please reach out to us. We can get you just about anything he's ever written. Yeah. What brought you to the JDL in particular? Because October 7th was October 7th. Yeah. And we all know that, anybody can go to a counter protest and yell and scream. Yeah. There's plenty of people that do it that they don't even know who Meir Kahane is, which is great that they do that. But what brought you to the JDL ideology?
So during my conversion process, I was turning more like right-wing and conservative. I had become a Trump fan and stuff like that. And I was just looking for like a firebrand rabbi, someone with like a lot of energy, tough, and like no nonsense, like Jewish strength, Jewish power, Jewish pride. I don't know, those were the ideas I was looking for and searching for. And I had just been looking for I was typing in Jewish militia, and Jewish group, Jewish Defense Organization, and that's exactly when I found it. And I watched a speech of his, and I was totally blown away. I was like, oh, this guy is amazing. Like, I never heard another rabbi talk like that. And to come out and say the truth and not be worried about what other people would say was amazing. Because that's the way I've always been, was just say the truth and not care about what people think or what people say about you. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that Meir Kahane embodied, was he spoke the truth. He didn't care what you would think about him. He didn't care what the Goyim would think about him. He didn't care what the Jewish establishment would think. He knew the truth. It was in the Torah, and he believed in it. And I just love that. And then the organization, the combating anti-Semitism, the helping young Jews come back to their heritage, building Jewish pride was amazing. Seeing the videos of the Camp Jabal, and them teaching young kids how to defend themselves, and just all of it was amazing. And to see Jews standing up for themselves in their community was just a turning point for me. And because you never hear about that stuff, like outside of the community, or even in the community, you don't really hear about it, you know what I mean? And it was just so different that it just attracted me, and I became obsessed with reading everything he could, he wrote, buying all his books, watching all his speeches, and then I kind of turned into editing videos of speeches, and then eventually, after my conversion, after October 7th happened, I started looking for JDL again, and I ended up finding a group. I joined, and that was one of the ways I got involved with Jewish activism at first, was another JDL group. Sadly, it didn't work out, you know what I mean? And we ended up forming JDL 613 because it was necessary that a group in New York, in New Jersey, here on the East Coast exists. With all the anti-Semitism, with all the attacks at colleges, Jews being chased down their streets, Jews being trapped in libraries, we cannot let this go on any longer. And if I can use some of my street smarts, use some of my toughness from my years out there to help the Jewish community, I'm willing to do so. And especially because the community has been so welcoming to me. Well, it's the least I could do to pay back the community,
Well, let me ask you a question. Now that you're in the Jewish community, right? And you've had a chance, now nothing is perfect, and I'm sure that you have seen now that there's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope the honeymoon is not over, but I mean, the honeymoon has to come to an end.
For sure.
At some point. And reality has to. Now, my personal feeling is the Jewish community in particular, we have a lot of division.
Yes.
I mean, you have Orthodox, a million different kinds of Orthodox Jews, from Hasidic to Litvish to modern Orthodox, Chabad. Then you have conservative Jews, you have Reform, and you have a huge problem in this country with intermarriage. There's more Jews are dropping out than ever before.
Yeah.
So where do you see the most problematic situations now now that you've been in the community, you've had a chance to see it from different perspectives, from different angles? Where do you see the biggest problem with the Jews today from your experience?
So I think it's actually two things. Number one is disunity. I see so much disunity in the Jewish community when we have so much in common. Every group, a lot of people are looking at what we don't have in common. Ooh, that guy's not from enough. That guy doesn't practice the same way I do. That guy doesn't say things in Hebrew. He doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. Instead of saying, hey, he's Jewish, he does keep Sabbath. Hey, he does read in Hebrew. Hey, they are doing this, and trying to find, I would love to see Jewish people in the community try to find the things that unite us instead of the things that pull us apart. Especially at a time like this, we need to come together, no matter what group you're a part of, Reform, Orthodox, Conservative, Republican, Democrat. We need to all realize that we're Jews first, and that's when they're gonna come after us because we're Jews, not because we're Orthodox, not because we're Reformed.
Just differentiate too much.
Yeah. Hitler didn't, like you said, Hitler didn't care if you were Reform or Orthodox, you were Jewish. And we need to put aside the differences and come together, especially at a time like this. It is needed, more so now than ever.
But at the same time, we are an Orthodox
Yes.
group that we call ourselves JDL 613. We adhere to the 613 mitzvot.
Yeah.
Now, we also have another facet of the group. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to, also the second thing was assimilate, or intermarriage. Intermarriage is a major issue nowadays too. That's the second issue.
Do we have any plans to possibly work on,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
for starting some singles events, or
Yeah.
would that be something that we?
Yeah, we would like to try and bring together young Jews in college settings and things like that to try and help them meet fellow Jews of the opposite sex and develop relationships and stuff like that. I'm coming from the secular world, from a non-Jew and becoming a Jew. I personally would never marry a non-Jew at this point because, I want this community to continue for generations down the road, and the only way we're going to do that is by continuing to marry within the faith and raise Jewish families and have Jewish kids, and the more we intermarry, while it might, melt us into the Western community, we have something special here, like Judaism gives us something special, and we need to keep that special, and watering it down, while in the modern world might seem okay, it's gonna will end up disappearing in the long run.
How important is self-defense? How do you see JDL 613 as a defensive group to help the community, and how important is learning how to use a weapon, how to protect yourself, whether it be martial arts, Krav Maga, boxing? How important is that?
Look, let's be honest. We're pro-police. Without them, we would have madness in our streets. But if something happens, the police aren't going to get there in time to save you. I always say they're practically a cleanup crew who doesn't clean up. You know what I mean? Because really, if someone breaks into your house, do you really think you're going to have time to call the police and then 10 minutes later, 5 minutes, 3 minutes later, they're going to get there to save you? No, you need to take action right then to save you and your family. And that's why learning how to legally own and use a firearm, and then learning Krav Maga and regular self-defense. I think children, women, men, everybody, elderly should know at least how to throw a punch and defend themselves a little bit. Defend themselves with a cane, use mace, anything. Because nowadays, nobody else is going to stick up for us except for our fellow Jews. You know what I mean? And everybody needs to know how to protect themselves, because there isn't always going to be the police there to help us. There isn't always going to be there someone to have your back. You know what I mean?
And I think that we could agree that there's no guarantees that the police and the non-Jewish world is going to protect us.
Yeah.
I think that we can see that now in the political climate. We're filming this on the same day that Trump sent the bombers into Iran to blow up their nuclear facilities. And right now, we can see on social media that a lot of people on the left and on the right are siding against his decision and against the Jewish people. So I think we can agree that we never know and where the threats are going to come from.
Right.
And I don't think we can be complacent.
Yeah, I mean, like as you said, we don't know where the threat's going to come from. It can come from anywhere at this point. The far right wing, left wing, in the middle. And we need to be prepared for it, because you just never know when or where it's going to come from.
Israel, I got one other question
Yeah.
for you. JDL 613 Brotherhood. What is this, a men's group, or is this just a slogan? Why Brotherhood?
No, we are a men's group. Even in the secular world, you see a lot of issues in the men's community. If you look up suicide statistics in men, every minute you got a man killing themselves. You know what I mean? That's a travesty, Jewish or not. You got men who are just not being men anymore. Men who have dropped out of the workforce, men who have dropped out of the dating pool, men who have no hope. And we're there to pull them up, to give them a hand, you know what I mean? Especially our fellow Jewish brothers, you know, and to grow stronger, be proud, help one another out, give back to the community. And it's just very important, you know, especially like we see the manosphere and stuff like that on the internet focused on non-Jews. What about Jewish men? You know?
Well, by calling this a brotherhood we want to help Jewish men build self-esteem in the Jewish community, hopefully avoid any sort of mental illness if they're having issues, if they're having relationships, if they feel lonely. We want to be there to help them, give them dating advice, give them self-defense. But
as we said, we want to help
slight to women?
No, not at all. It's not a slight to women. It's just we feel that Jewish men need the focus right now, and more than ever. And we're there to, you know, like we're building up Jewish men so that they can then defend their families, defend their wives, defend their children. You know what I mean? And in return, help out Jewish women. You know.
One last thing.
Yes.
Before we go, social media. How important is social media to what JDL 613 Brotherhood is doing?
Very important. I mean, we live in a modern day, so to spread the word, you know, like the modern square, the town square is the internet, is the social media, and that's where you can really reach out. You know, like I've been pushing a lot of Americana videos on TikTok, and I've gotten a lot of backlash. You know, people say, "Oh, that's a communist platform. That's youngsters." No, I want to target the youngsters. I want to send them the message that there's something else out there. You don't need to run and hide. You can be strong. You can be Jewish and proud. You don't have to hide your Star of David. You don't have to hide your kippah. No more of that stuff. You know what I mean? And like the social media nowadays is the way to spread the word, to share America Hana's essays, to really get out there. And we've been really pulling in a lot of attention and stuff like that. In the description, we'll put in our links, you know, to this video, to all of our social media and stuff. But it's very important. Now, at the same time, you have to be careful because social media can lead you into not doing what you should be doing and can affect your brain and stuff like that. But it is the modern town square, and you know, we want to reach out to as many people as possible. So,
and if you had one message for the Jewish community in America today, especially the males between the ages of, let's say, 18 and to 75, what would you tell them, and how can they use us, and how can they contact us to help their current situation? If they having a problem in their community where they're feeling bullied, an older person's afraid to go to the grocery store and they need help, how can they utilize our resources to help them out?
First, my message to them would be stand tall, speak out, and fight back. Now is not the time for silence or complacency. We all need to come together and do everything we can, no matter how big or how small, to join the fight in combating anti-Semitism, bringing back Jewish pride, bringing back Jewish power. If people want to contact us, our email will be in the description. We also have a website, jdl613.com. We're on Twitter, JDL Brotherhood, and we're also on Instagram, JDL613 Brotherhood. Contact us at any of these social medias. Our email is on there. If anybody's interested in joining, you can contact us at JDL613apply, APPLY @yahoo.com, and we will get back in contact with you. And if you have any other questions or concerns, please let us know at that email as well.
Israel, thank you so much for doing this with me today. And going forward, we're going to have more content. We're going to have more interesting guests. And I hope that everybody takes the time out to tap in with us, because we have a lot of big things planned in the near future. And thank you so much for everybody watching. Be well to all.